Okay, this seems like a good time to start. Welcome everyone to this ARCHER2 webinar. Today we have Chris Johnson, who's going to be talking about the embedded CSE program. The embedded CSE program is a form of support which provides funding to the ARCHER2 user community to develop software in the hope of improving research on the ARCHER2 service. This previously was on Archer as well, and there is currently a call ongoing. So the purpose of this talk is to provide some information about the calls, some information about how to apply for the calls, and to allow people to ask questions and get answers from Chris, who's one of the people behind the scenes making sure that the calls go well and checking through the applications. I think that's right. Is that correct, Chris?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, brilliant. The way that this presentation will go, Chris will present the information on the embedded CSE calls, after which there will be a question and answer session. The first part of the question and answer session will be recorded, so anything that you do ask will be recorded. Please be aware of that. After which we'll stop the recording so that if anyone has any questions that they want to ask but would rather not be recorded and posted on YouTube, you will then have an opportunity to ask Chris any of those questions as well. With that, let's go. Let's turn over to Chris for his presentation.
Okay, thanks very much, Julian. So welcome everybody. So as Julian said, this is a talk about the ARCHER2 embedded CSE program, the eCSE program. I gave a talk on this back in about May, I think, of last year. So although some of the material, if you were at that webinar, you will have seen some of the material before, but I have updated it since. So there are some new things here, and I'm describing the present status. And as Julian mentioned, of course, we do have a call open at the moment, so we thought it was an opportune time to give an update and just to tell you all about the program if you didn't know about it already. So the first slide I have here is just on the standard one we give on reusing the material, but I'm just drawing attention to it because we are keen to promote the CSE program as widely as possible. So if you do want to reuse any of this material and you want to maybe give a talk on the eCSE in your own department or pass on to anyone else, then please do that. This slide explains to you about how to give appropriate credit for the slides and the license and various things. You can look at that, but we are keen for you to spread the word. And I also should say that if you decide that you would like me to speak to you, maybe me to give the talk a bit like this to your own group, I can do that, or one of us here at the CSE team can do that. We're always happy for that. Talk about the eCSE program or any other aspect of ARCHER2 for that matter. ARCHER2, as most of you probably know, is funded by UKRI and specifically EPSRC and NERC. EPCC at the University of Edinburgh actually run the service, and the hardware is provided by Cray HPE. So there's a set of logos there to represent each of those partners. So during this talk, what I will do is follow, broadly speaking, the overview that's given here. There may be a little bit of overlap between some of the topics here, but basically I'll go through and describe what the CSE program is. I will refer you back to some previous examples of eCSE type work, and then I'll talk more generally about the kinds of work that can be done for an eCSE project. I will talk about the present status, where we are at the moment with eCSE under ARCHER2, a little bit about future plans we have. And then what I'll do towards the end is I'll talk more specifically about how you actually apply for a project, what you actually need to do, what you actually need to put into a proposal. And what I intend to do is do an actual walkthrough of the submission of a proposal. I've got a little video, it's a silent video, which I will talk over the top of. I did this before and it worked. We'll see if it works this time, but hopefully it will. And that will give you a good idea of what is involved in actually putting in a proposal. And then, of course, at the end, there's time for questions, as Julian mentioned. If you do have questions as you go along, please put them to the chat. I might not see them immediately, but my colleagues will hopefully alert me if anything major comes up. But failing that, just you can always ask questions at the end. Okay, so what is this all about? What is eCSE funding for? Well, the eCSE, it stands for Embedded CSE, Embedded Computational Science and Engineering Support. It funds software development to support the ARCHER2 user community. It's worth a note here about the history of this. This all started back under the HECTOR program, which is so the HECTOR service, which was the one before ARCHER. And under that service, a program known as the DCSE, the Distributed CSE Programme, was run. And the idea there was that the research councils involved, instead of just giving all of the CSE money to a centralized team who would then do all the software development and do all the support work, the idea was that some money would be given to that team, that core team, but the rest of it would be distributed around the at the time the HECTOR community. So at the time, NAG were running the CSE service, so they ran this thing called the DCSE. That then continued under ARCHER when we took over the CSE service, and the eCSE program was born, which followed along similar lines. And that was then continued into ARCHER2. Obviously, it has it's had updates, improvements, and changes as the time goes on. But it's broadly speaking run since, as I said, since the beginning of HECTOR, which I think started in 2007, so about 13, 14 years now. So the idea really is that the program allows software to be developed in a sustainable manner to improve research on the ARCHER2 service. So this is to facilitate the efficient use of ARCHER2 resources through enhanced code performance and functionality. So this is really software development funding to actually work on codes that will actually run on ARCHER2. So it allows the employment of an RSE to carry out software development to codes leading to research that's within the EPSRC or NERC remit, so codes that will run on ARCHER2. I'll describe a little bit more what I mean by RSE and who's eligible to actually work on this and to get funding in just a minute. Now, the ARCHER2 hardware is described on the ARCHER2 website. Now, ARCHER2 doesn't presently have a GPU component, so this is for projects focusing on the CPU hardware, the ARCHER2 CPU hardware, rather than any GPU or any other kind of hardware. So I mentioned before that a program like this had run under originally HECTOR and then ARCHER. So the ARCHER2 eCSE program follows on directly from the very successful program that we had that ran under ARCHER, that ran for most of the ARCHER service. So during that time, we awarded 973 person months across 100 projects, so 973 person months. I think that's about 81 person years, so quite a lot of effort across 100 different projects. That 973 person months also included 32 extra person months above our original commitment, and I'll say in a minute a little bit about how that came about, or how that might come about again. During the program, there were over 100 RSEs involved. I actually had a look back at the figures, and there are actually 101 different people who worked on eCSE projects. So we're actually employed on eCSE projects at various levels in the UK across 26 different institutions. And if you look across to the right, you can see a map of the UK, and the green circles there show you where the funding was, where the actual people were employed to work. So you can see it up at the top there, basically the darker the green, the more people that were employed there. So, and we had quite a up at EPCC, in the University of Edinburgh, but by no means all. There were a lot of other places as well. So you can see down in London, there were quite a few there. You can see about halfway up, there's STFC at Daresbury Laboratory, quite a few, but there's a lot of other places as well where RSEs were employed to work on eCSEs. The best place to go back and find out about that is to look on the Archer website. If you go to the community section, you'll find the eCSE there, and there is a whole page full of eCSE highlights that describe the work that was done. And it's really the best way of finding out what the eCSE program is about, rather than just listen to me talking about it, is to actually go back and look at that page, and you will see specifically the kinds of work that was carried out under Archer, and we expect similar things under ARCHER2. The other thing you can do is look back at previous webinars that were run under Archer. If you go back to the training section section, you will find a list of webinars, and some of them are eCSE, and they describe the kind of eCSE work that was done. So in terms of the actual funding, so EPCC guarantees that an average of at least 12 FTEs per year will be provided for eCSEs, and all the costings are based on the 80% FEC model. I'll explain a bit more about how you cost things up in a minute. So the funding for eCSEs can be requested for staff located in all sorts of different places. So if you are an RSC, what we call an RSC, but that could be a postdoc or researcher in a research group, or you're a PI, you might have somebody in your group, maybe you, maybe one of your own, somebody else in your group who is familiar with the code you want to work on, and has the skills to carry out software development on that code. So it may well be that somebody within your own group, within the institution of the PI, will actually work on the code. So you can get funding for that person to work on it. It may be that the most appropriate person is not at the PI's institution, but that they're a different UK institution, what we'd call a third-party institution. It may be that you want somebody from EPCC's centralized CSE support team to work on the code, because maybe you don't have somebody with exactly the skills at your institution. That's fine. And you can use a named EPCC person if you know of someone, or if you get in touch and we find someone. It's also possible to put in an unnamed EPCC person if you just want support from EPCC, but you don't have any specific person in mind. We prefer people to be named where possible, but you can use an unnamed person. Or it may be that you have some combination of the above. So you may have a postdoc in your own group who can work on, maybe put in, say, 3 months of effort on the code, but you may want some specific help, optimization help or something from the EPCC team. So maybe somebody from EPCC would put in 3 months. So you can use various different combinations of the above people, as long as the total number of person months is between 3 and 12. So we have a set of core values that we consider to be very important for the program. So openness, independence, transparency, not-for-profit service, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute, and a service that provides value for money to the HPC user community and beyond. So the funding will be allocated using an open, fair, and peer-reviewed funding program. And it's important to note here that the proposals are selected by an independent, diverse panel of experts. So the panel is independent of EPCC, so we do not decide who gets funded. We go along to the panel meetings to facilitate them and to provide technical input, but we don't decide who gets funded. We also bid for some of this effort ourselves, so we think it's right that the panel is independent of us, and some of our proposals are successful, sometimes they won't be, just the same as everybody else's. The panel is diverse in several different ways, in terms of gender, in terms of experience. All the panel members are experts in their field, but some of them may have many years of experience. Some of them fewer years, but they still have expertise in their field, and can also be supported by the more experienced panel members, and they are diverse in the range of expertise that they have. Okay, so that's our panel. So we run a regular series of calls for proposals. We have 3 calls per year throughout the service. So I mentioned before that the service was not for profit. So what we mean here is that we guarantee that we will provide at least 12 FTEs per year on average. And if that costs us more than the money that we get from the research councils, then we make up that shortfall. On the other hand, if we find that there's money left over at the end, then that residual funding will be used to provide additional ECSE staff months of effort. And last time, as I mentioned before, we managed to put in just over 30 extra person months because of that. And if there's money left over, we will do the same again. So we're very keen within the programme to support early career researchers, the eCSE programme lends itself quite naturally to early career, as a lot of the people working on the programme are fairly early on in their careers, actually doing software development. But we are particularly keen to encourage early career people. It's a very good opportunity to develop software development skills, and we do note that whilst some of the people that put in proposals may have a lot of experience, where RSEs have less experience, that's fine if there's support within the project for that RSE to do the work. So we're not looking for people who necessarily have years and years of experience. You can be quite early career. So as long as all the support's in place within your team, that's good. We encourage that. We also have another way of supporting early career researchers in that we have observers at our panel meetings. So for the last call, we put out a call for early career observers who could come along, observe the panel meeting. They were subject to same sort of confidentiality and conflicts of interest as actual panel members. They came along to the panel meeting, observed how the panel was run, could see what makes a good proposal, what reviewers are looking for. So 5 of them attended, all found it very useful. That's a very good opportunity to see what reviewers are looking for. And we will run another one of those calls during 2021. So look out for that if you're interested in coming along. So in terms of the status, the first 2 calls have already run. We've already awarded 185 person months across 20 different projects. I think we've had 37 proposals so far. The PIs come from 15 different UK institutions. RSEs who will work on these projects come from 11 different UK institutions, and many of the projects are already underway or just getting started. So those first 2 calls have run and been reviewed and project starting. The third call is presently open. So it's worth noting that the original deadlines were extended due to the current lockdown situation. We're aware that the lockdown affects different people in different ways. Some people, it's affecting everyone, of course, but some people it will affect a lot more than others. If you've got family to look after, or you're not able to put in full hours and so on at the moment. So we thought, in light of this, we would extend the deadline for the call in order to be fair to everyone. So the deadlines were pushed back by 4 weeks. I'll give those deadlines in just a minute. So that deadline was extended, saying this is really to be in line with our diversity and inclusion policy, which you can see in the link there. We put the timetable of calls online. At the moment, the timetable just goes up to the next call, but we will add some shortly. Do keep an eye on that. We aim to keep the timetable as per the schedule given on that web page. Obviously, from time to time, we may have to change things, such as we did this time due to the lockdown. But if you keep an eye on that page, it will tell you when the next calls are coming up. But they are 3 times a year, and broadly speaking, they'll follow the same kind of pattern each year, so you can predict more or less when they will be. So, as I mentioned, the best way of finding out the examples of the kinds of work we do is to go back and have a look at the projects that we funded under ARCHER. Go back to the ARCHER website and look at those highlights. So more broadly speaking, the kinds of eCSE work that we would expect are listed in these bullet points here. So it may be the implementation of some algorithmic improvement within an existing code. So if you have an algorithm, a known algorithm that you want to implement into an existing code in a nice portable way, that could be an example of an eCSE project. You may want to improve the scalability of software so that it will run more efficiently on higher core counts. Again, to do that kind of work in a portable manner is a typical eCSE kind of work. It may be that the work isn't specifically about improving the performance or doing anything with the actual functionality itself. It may be that what you want to do is to improve the sustainability and maintainability of a code. It's often forgotten just how important that is. So that can be a very good reason. Maintainability, sustainability, and indeed just usability, they're important features as well. It may be that you want to put in improvements that allow new science to be carried out on ARCHER2. It may be that you need to port or optimize a code to run efficiently on ARCHER2. You may want to add new functionalities. Or it may be that you have a code that runs well at the moment on a tier 2 system or a local university cluster, and you want to move it up to ARCHER2. They would all be examples of the kinds of work. One thing that we should note here is that funding cannot be used to actually do scientific research, or in fact to do algorithmic research. The idea here is that it's software development, so the algorithms would already have to exist. You would already have to know what science you wanted to do at the end. It's all about software development, so we're not directly funding scientific research here. Of course, the work will lead to better scientific research, but it's not to actually do scientific research. So in terms of the future, so the existing eCSE programme is for projects that are between 3 and 12 person months in total. We do plan to introduce a funding stream for shorter projects, what might be called, say, the lightweight projects, between 1 and 3 person months. This might be for just making small improvements to codes that don't require a full sort of 3 to 12 person month eCSE. So it could be, for example, something that might just have like a project that might have 1 work package or maybe 1 or 2 small tasks in them. And this is really to complete the ARCHER, what we call the spectrum of support. So it's to provide projects that are larger than in-depth support, which are sort of at the level of up to about 4 to 6 weeks, but less than a full eCSE project that goes from 3 months. So it's to sort of fill that gap, really. We intend to introduce that soon, hopefully for the next call. At the moment, we're just seeking input from eCSE panel around the way that we would review these and the kinds of things that we would be looking for in a proposal form. So do keep an eye out for that if you're interested in running a project which is perhaps a bit smaller than is available at the moment. Alongside of that, we're also looking at ways to involve RSCs that are experienced in HPC, that can perhaps help people put in proposals. So if you're an RSC, a postdoc or something, a researcher who is presently, you might know a lot about a code, you might want to do some work on it, but perhaps you don't quite have the HPC experience. So we're looking at ways of matching you up with an RSC who does have HPC experience, who can perhaps help you within the project. And just in general, we do employ what's known as the continual service improvement, CSI, where we do continually try and improve things. So forms and processes are updated following feedback from applicants and reviewers, and that's done all of the time as we go through. So that's just a note there, really, to do make sure that you always use the most up-to-date proposal form, and that you always look at the most up-to-date guidance, because these things do get updated. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is talk specifically about actually applying for an eCSE project, and how you might go about it. So, as I mentioned, the third call is open at present. It opened a few weeks before Christmas. The technical evaluation documents must be submitted to ARCHER2 service desk by the 23rd of February, by 4 o'clock on that date. So the process for applying is two-stage. You first of all fill in the technical evaluation document, which is really about the code. Submit that to the ARCHER2 help desk. It must be in by that date, by that time. We will then do a technical evaluation, send the completed document back to you. There may be some toing and froing and some questions during that time, so we don't just fill it in and send it back and that's it. You know, we will speak to you if we have questions, or if we spot anything which we think needs further, needs elaboration. So get that to us by the 23rd of February. Then the final deadline for full proposals, to which you would also attach the completed technical evaluation, that is due by the 16th of March at 4 o'clock. And late proposals won't be considered. We really do have to get them in on time, just to be fair to everyone. Now, we do realize that everyone at the moment is working from home, or in all sorts of different places. So we recognize people just sometimes have last-minute internet problems. So what we say there is, please do make sure that you keep your proposal up to date. So whenever if you make an update to your proposal document, just add it to your online submission. You can always then update it later, and that does mean if there's a last-minute problem, we can just go back and look at what you had up to the point. If you couldn't press the final submit button, for example, we can go back and see, oh, well, you've got your proposal document in, your technical evaluation was in. Maybe it wasn't the absolute last version, but we can see that it was in. Obviously, if you've not put anything in, then we can't really help. So do just keep that up to date. So you can keep updating it, and you can keep replacing documents and updating fields right up until the last minute. Projects can start 2 to 6 months after the call is closed. If you're outside of that range, do just get in touch and we can talk about what's possible and what's doable. But the guide is 2 to 6 months after the call closes. Any project team members must have been invited to a proposal and accepted the invitation via the SAFE before final submission. If they're not, then they won't be on the proposal. They won't be considered. I'll show you a little bit about how you do that in a minute. So you do make sure you invite people early. And in particular, you cannot submit an eCSE proposal if there is no technical staff on the proposal, and they must have their CV added to that. The link there shows you the call itself and links to various things, which I'll go into in a minute. So in fact, that is that link there. You can see the third call online. I don't expect you to be able to read that text as is at the moment, but you can go and take a look at it. One thing to note here is that just a few lines down, we do refer to the terms here. So if your eCSE proposal is selected for funding, you'll be provided with an award letter and you'll be asked to agree to the eCSE terms. Please do view those terms before you submit, and if necessary, get your research office or whoever in your department needs to look at it, just to check that you would be able to accept those terms if your funding is awarded. It's a lot easier to check that through before you submit than to submit and then the research department start having all sorts of questions about it. I mean, those terms are designed to be uncontroversial, to be straightforward, and to be something that you can just accept. They're not negotiated each time; they're just fixed terms. But it is important that you check through them first, just to make sure that your institution wouldn't have any problems with them. And you may well have clarification questions, which we can easily provide. So do have a look at those. And then, as I say, when you If your proposal is selected, you will get an award letter and you'll be asked to agree to those terms. There's nothing to sign, there's no contract as such, it's just those terms. So we try and keep things as simple as possible. So some things have changed since the ARCHER service. So as I mentioned before, it's the technical evaluation documents must be submitted at the first deadline, then final submission for the second deadline. It's a two-stage process. Say any proposal members, any team members must be invited and accepted the proposal to join before final submission. Otherwise, they won't be considered part of the team. There are various different allowable roles within a proposal. So the proposal should have one PI. It can have multiple co-Is, multiple technical staff. You can also put people on the proposal to be contacts or members. They don't have a specific role in the project, but it may be that you need to give access to the proposal to other people to update it on your behalf. So you can make them contacts or members. Technical staff, once you've added them and they've accepted the invitation, they can add their own CVs and must do that. Other team members must provide their track record and describe what they bring to the project. So that includes the PI and any co-Is. Co-Is can be very useful as part of the team, but don't just add people for the sake of it. Please, if you want to put a co-I on, put them on and get them to describe their role. What will they actually do in the project? There is a space for them to do that. And as I mentioned, you cannot submit without technical staff. They may be, in some cases, unnamed if they're from EPCC, but you need to mention that. You need to put that on the form, otherwise it won't let you submit. There are proposal templates available for the technical evaluation and the proposal template and the proposal document. So they are attached to the call text. The other important thing that's attached to the call text is the guidelines. There is a full set of guidelines as to how you apply for an eCSE. Please do look through that. Almost all questions will be in there. If you have any questions, contact the service desk, but you may well find that they're answered in there. So these templates for the proposal document and the technical evaluation there's MS Word versions available. The technical evaluation contains sections to describe the code. The complexity of your code modifications, you don't describe your full project here, but you go through and you describe, what kinds of, how pervasive are the changes you'll make to the code. You need to give some scaling evidence, talk about the sustainability, maintenance and validation of codes, and talk about the availability of codes on completion of the project. It's all described within that document itself as to what you need in those various sections. And the proposal template contains just a small number of sections after you put in the basic titles and so on. So it has project objectives and success metrics, a project overview, technical information and work plan, and the impact and benefits. So for each member of technical staff, you need to provide their costings. So what you do is we use what's known as the full economic costing, the FEC model here. Your university should know what that is to get you a costing. You put in the 100% FEC, and we then would pay 80% of that. That's a standard thing. Funding should only include technical staff. So that should include any direct and indirect costs. So it's not just salary, but should not include what's known as additional costs, so PI costs, co-I costs, etc. If you have any questions about that, just get in touch, okay? Travel is given separately from the above, so you need to put that in separately in the proposal form. So that can include any project members traveling within the UK to meet each other. But our funds are very limited, and right now, to be honest, people aren't really doing much travel. So do think very carefully about whether you really need travel. It's just there if you need it. If, say, for example, the technical staff is remote from the PI, and that member of staff needs to go and visit the PI. But do consider that right now, video calls and things are quite useful. So just put travel in when it's needed. There is later going to be a separate fund available to for travel to activities that showcase the outcome of eCSE work, so conferences and so on. So the funding that you're asking for now for travel should not include any of that. It's really just for project meetings. So I mentioned above that we use a full economic costing model. If your institution does not use that, then you'll need to provide something equivalent to it, and it would be sensible for you to contact us in advance to check those costings to make sure that they work. Okay. Any supporting documentation must be included with your proposal, and you must provide costing, a backup of the cost, well, a document describing where the costings come from. Your institution should be able to provide that using something like WorkTribe or an equivalent, but your institution will be used to doing that. Again, just get in touch if you have any questions, but that will need to be put in with your proposal as a PDF. So we pay the PI's institution via invoice. So any payment to third parties is paid via the PI's institution. So it's important to take that into account when you're putting your team together and check that that all works for your institution. So costings need to be provided for every member of staff. The only exception is where there's an ARCHER CSE member of staff, whether named or unnamed. You don't need to put in costings for that because we know our own costings, so we can deal with that. But anybody outside of EPCC basically needs to be costed. It's recommended that you use named staff as much as possible, as the ability of the technical staff to complete the work is assessed, and you should add a CV. So as much as possible, do use named staff, and that's considered together with the PI COI expertise, the expertise of the whole team. So to start a proposal, first of all, go to the call page that links to the templates, guidance, terms, and so on, and actually start the thing in the safe, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. To start with, you only need to enter the project title, subject area, and research area, i.e. which research council remit it belongs to. And you should do that before you submit your technical evaluation. Once you've submitted your technical evaluation, you can then go on and update more of the proposal, but just to start with, just get those things in. And once you've submitted your technical evaluation, that will go to the ARCHER2 service desk. We will give you your returned PDF in good time for the submission. So once you've done the technical evaluation, there's a number of things that you can be doing. So you can check through the terms document, invite team members within the SAFE, get the costing information you need, start filling in the proposal form and the online form, get any letters of support. That they're optional, okay, but it is useful to get letters of support from researchers. One thing I would say is that letters of support are most useful from people who have a real need for the updates that you're going to do to a code. So not just sort of warm notes of support from people saying, oh yes, we support this work, we think it'll be useful. Well, they're all very well, but actually what reviewers really want to see are people who are actually saying, well, I need these updates, you know, I need this work to be done in order that I can carry out my research. Or from, for example, package maintainers who say, well, yes, we will maintain or we will support these updates to the package that you're going to make. So they're the most useful kinds of letters of support. So as I say, templates are provided for the proposal documents and for technical evaluations. They should all be completed and everything should be attached as PDFs. And as I say, everything needs to be into the system by the 16th of March. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to stop sharing that for a minute, and I'm going to start sharing a little video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the submission of an eCSE proposal in the SAFE. This is one that I put in earlier. It's quite obviously a demo, a sort of dummy proposal, but you can see hopefully how it works. So what I've done here is you can see on the screen hopefully that I've already logged into the SAFE. The SAFE may look different to you depending on whether you're coming in from the ARCHER SAFE or where you're coming in from, but functionally it should be as you'll see here. And also because I have various different roles in the SAFE, so my menus might look slightly different from yours, but it's basically this should be how it works. So first thing you'll do is you'll log on to the SAFE. And then what you do is you go to the top and click on eCSE funding. And there you can see click on funding calls. And there we have a button for you to click new application. You can see the eCSE-03 call is open. Some text for you to read, and then you press the create button. And then what you need to do is put in the title, select the appropriate funding call. There's only one option at the moment, so I'm just going to call it eCSE demo. I'm going to create that. And then we get to the form itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit. You can edit these things in sections. So I'm going to edit the first section. So I'm going to say so I'm just making one up here. I'm going to say it's chemistry and materials, research area. Well, it's obviously going to be EPSRC. So at that point, you can select EPSRC, NERC, or both. In most cases, we would expect that it will be one or the other. There may be some, if there's really significant components of both, you might say both. But if it's really the vast majority of it is one or the other, then just select one or the other. And then what you then have is a box. If you've put other there, you need to describe it. And then there's another box where you give a short summary of the project. And that what you should do there is that summary there should give enough description that you can that somebody can see why it's, for example, within EPSRC, or why it's within NERC, or why it's both, as that is looked at by the reviewers too. I should add, sorry, the other box there is if you've selected other in the subject area, so you can describe more. Okay, so then we update that. We then go to the next section, the project details. So I'm going to say, okay, materials and chemistry. So what you can do here is select any consortia or a particular consortium that your project is most aligned to. It may be none, so you can leave that blank if it's none, if you're not involved in a particular consortium. And then there's a couple of questions about whether it's a resubmission or whether it's a follow-on project. So I'm just going to leave those for now. And I'm going to go down to the next section, and I'm going to choose a principal investigator. So what I could do is I could click on the Add PI button here. And what I could do then is I could enter the name, the email address of the PI. And what you should do here is use the email address that PI uses in the SAFE, or if they're not signed up to the SAFE yet, the one that they would use. So please check with them. And then if you click create, then it will email them and ask them to join the project. Of course, it's often the PI, him or herself, who's putting in the proposal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel that, and I'm just going to make myself the PI. It often will be the PI who's doing it. So I'm going to keep things simple. So I've just made myself the PI. So now you can see me there as PI. And then what you could do is you could add co-Is if you wanted, and again you can add them. It will then send an invitation to them, and you can add members if you need other people to see the proposal. And then I'm going to add technical staff, and usually that would be someone else. Typically the PI would not be doing technical work, but what I'm going to do here to keep things simple is I'm just going to add myself as a technical member of staff. That'd be a slightly odd thing to do, but it's just to show you for this demo. So that so you put the role of the staff there. They can add that themselves too. I'm just going to say this starts on, say, 1st of June, just for the start date. I'm going to give the technical effort level. So I'm going to say I'm going to put 6 person months in to the project. And then what you would do here is put in a costing for those 6 months. I'm just going to put in a nice round number. So I'm going to say 50,000 just to keep it simple. And that's what you would typically do. I'm going to delete that because actually, because I'm an EPCC member of staff, I already have the costing. So I'm just going to tick that box at the bottom, which says, because I'm EPCC, I don't need the costing. Then in here, you should put in any existing funding that you have, anything that you would be working on at the same time as the eCSE work. And that's important to know, so we know how, what other things the member of staff will be doing there. And so I'm going to put myself in at the bottom there as the member of technical staff. Then I'm going to edit. Oh yes, I'm going to say the project starts on 1st of June. And I'm going to say it's 12 months. So I said I put in 6 person months here, so obviously I'm going to be working at 50%. So that's where that existing funding comes in, because it explains what else I'd be working on at the same time, so the panel can judge how well that's going to work. So then I'm going to put in stuff about the code. So I'm going to say this is working on CASTEP, just a fairly well-used code. I'm just going to put in some numbers. It's important that we know how many people use this code as much as possible. These can be estimates. So what I did was I looked up on the ARCHER website, I looked at the previous month just to see how much CASTEP was used. My information here may be a little out of date here, but I said 1 month showed 13 users, so I got that from the ARCHER website. You can obviously put in a bit more text here than I am, but I'm just being brief to go through it. Then how did I get the global number of users? Well, I looked that up online a little while ago, and found how many users there apparently are for CASTEP worldwide. So that was 150 user groups at the time that I looked at this a little while ago. And then I'm going to say, well, what percentage of the users will benefit from my improvements? I'm going to say 5% there. So you can think about that a bit more. And then what you should do there is explain in that box, which, sorry, I'm just covering up slightly there, explain in that box there any existing funding for the code. So that's to make sure, obviously, that the work isn't already being funded, but also just to put things in context to show what other work is being done to the codes at the same time. So do fill that in. So we're not far off now. So then what I'm going to do is fill in the area of work and just say what kind of work this is. So I'm going to say this is focusing on performance improvements, but you tick as many of those boxes as you need, or if other, then you fill that in. Training and support, I'm going to keep this simple and say none. Travel, well, I don't think I'll be going anywhere for a little while, so I'm going to put in none there just to keep things simple, and 0 there. Then I need to add some documents, so I need to add the proposal document. So I've got some dummy ones here. So there we go, I've added the proposal document. Then I got my completed technical evaluation done by the help desk. So you'll see that submit this application at the bottom is grayed out at the moment. That's because I haven't added these documents yet, so I can't submit. So then I've got a letter of support from, in this case, a made-up person. So I'm going to add that. Now, there's still a couple more things that I need to add because I added technical staff, and in this slightly odd situation here, I added myself as technical staff, but I need to edit that because I need to add my CV. So I'm going to add that there. And my costings. So update there. And now I should be ready to submit. So I can click on submit this application. And yes. And then you'll see that it appears there. So I'm going to sharing that and go back to my slides. Okay, so that was how you submit a proposal. Now, obviously, I did that in, I think that video was 7 minutes and 14 seconds. I don't expect you to be able to do it quite that quickly, but hopefully you can see that it's not a particularly difficult process once you have all the information. Obviously, you'll need to take a little bit of more time over things, but you can see that there's not a huge amount that needs to go there. Most of the work goes into preparing the proposal document, the technical evaluation, and getting all the staffing in place and making sure that you've got the costings and everything. So in summary, the third call is open. Technical evaluations must be submitted to the service desk by the 23rd of February, and the final deadline for full proposals is the 16th of March. Details of the call are found on the ARCHER2 website under eCSE and calls, with links to all the templates and, importantly, things like the terms and the guidance. Please do look at them. There will be 3 calls per year throughout the ARCHER2 lifetime for you to get software development funded. And if you have any questions, of course, you can ask them now. But after this, do feel free just to contact the ARCHER2 service desk, and we'll get back to you. Nothing will get missed there, as everything is logged. So please do get in touch. So that's all I had in terms of slides. So I guess over to you for any questions.
Before we get on to the questions, I wanted to say thank you, Chris, for taking the time to give this talk. It was very informative and really showed how easy the application process is for this. For everyone else, the way we're going to do questions is there will be one part of the question session which will be recorded and thereby will be on YouTube, and then we will stop the recording to allow anyone who has questions that they would rather not be recorded for whatever reasons. And also, if you don't want anyone else to hear what questions you have to ask, please feel free to email support@archer2.ac.uk.
Yeah. Okay. So I see there's a question from Juan there. So if the technical staff belongs to EPCC, is it still needed for them to submit a CV as well? Yes, it is. Yeah. So if the technical staff is EPCC based, they should submit a CV just the same, because they are everybody is all proposals are reviewed and everybody is judged in the same way. So yes, please, a CV is still needed. Yeah. So in terms of payment, if the technical staff are at EPCC and the payment is for another institution, you actually, in that case, you don't need to do anything about payment, because payment is internal. So if the technical staff is outside of EPCC, then we do need to think about, you'll need costings in advance, and yeah, you'll need to be clear about how payments work. But if the technical staff is at EPCC, it doesn't matter where the PI is in terms of finances, because the money is internal. So nothing needs to be done with that. But obviously I can discuss that with you as well separately. So will the eCSE Lite have the same deadlines? So that's one of the things that we're discussing at the moment. Broadly speaking, I think it probably will. We are looking to make the process as light as possible, but actually we've already shortened the timescales a fair bit for the regular eCSE. So it's hard to compress them much more. So we're going to make it as lightweight as possible for the shorter eCSEs, but not certain exactly what the timescales will be. But broadly speaking, they'll probably be similar to what we have now.
As there are no more questions incoming, I will now stop the recording.